Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business, and I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode with James Stockdale. James has over 25 years plus experience in the IT support and services sector, including several years at Apple. Following this role, James launched a business focused on companies using Apple tech. Since exiting this business last year, he's now working on genzee.it, a platform that gives small business owners an easier way to access vital tech support. James, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Romesh. It's lovely to meet you and Mike as well.
Thanks for joining.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we're really excited for today's discussion. Can we start off by doing our kind of minute summary from you about what you've been up to and your career to date?
Yeah, how far do you want me to go back? Not very long. Most recently, I'll give you a very, very quick summary. So I've been entrepreneurial or in business for a very, very long time, since a young age. And I've also held a number of employed positions as well. So I've sat both sides of the fence. I started off in the corporate world, sort of like working within IT, support desks, help desks, straight after finishing my A-levels at school. And then worked there for a number of years, eventually left to be kind of a freelance IT, had got into doing some design work as well. And so became like web design and doing IT, like web coding, HTML, CSS, that sort of thing. That sort of then, there was a big bit of disruption to my life sort of over the sort of like 2009, 10, 11, following the financial crisis that happened. That put me back into employment. That's how I ended up going and working for Apple for a few years. And while working there, I saw an opportunity that there was more and more people adopting Apple technology, particularly small businesses, yet there wasn't much specialized support out there for them. And in fact, a lot of the incumbent IT companies didn't really understand Apple and didn't really want to support them either. So I set out on a path to create a space where businesses and consumers, I used to do some consumer repairs as well, but a specialist business that would allow people that have got Apple products more choice than just to go to the Apple store if they needed a repair or needed some support, because the Apple store is great. If you go to Apple, you're quite limited in terms of you can only get advice around that particular product, that particular brand. Whereas I had much broader background in IT services and support, so I was able to be far more inclusive about integrating Apple technology into the wider ecosystem of IT. So yeah, I did that. I then met someone else who was in a similar position to me. We sort of kind of collaborated his business and my business together. And then last year he decided he wanted to take that business in a slightly different direction to me. So I sold my half of the business, and now looking at new projects. And my latest project is genzee.it, which I'm sure we'll delve into a little bit more later.
Really good. Thanks, James. Really nice to meet you. I'd like to touch on your exit in a bit, but first, tell us a bit about what it was like setting up your own business after the IT firm, having worked with Apple, and then what your experience of working with a co-founder was.
Yeah, well, I'm one of these weird people that I never quite have. From a young age, I never seem to quite fit in with the crowd, or take what most people would seem is like the sensible route. I must have an odd perception of risk because I'm quite happy to jump into things both feet first. And I've kind of learnt my lesson over the years by getting my fingers burnt in that way. But at the same time, I think that is part of the entrepreneurial mindset, is that if you see an opportunity, you've just got to go for it. You've got to get stuck in and you've got to make it work. At the point I started Fruit Geek, which was the name of the company that I left, the company that I started when I left Apple. That was very much seeing that the opportunity was there and looking ahead to think that there's an opportunity, there's something there that I can start and I can grow. And because I'd done a number of either side businesses or I'd worked as a freelancer and started a kind of smaller business previously, I didn't really think of the risk or really feel like it was too much of a big step. I just saw it as a natural thing. I'm like, I've been working at Apple like 4 or 5 years or whatever it had been by that point. I know the brand, I know the ecosystem really, really well. I understand IT more generally and how it works within business. And I just thought, I can step into this. Obviously, a year down the line after that, I realised that there are so many other elements that I hadn't thought of, and then I was in that classic position of wearing every hat and starting to build a customer base, and then trying to serve everyone, plus do everyone's repairs, plus being the support guy at the time as well. So the real challenge came sort of once I was in it for a year or so, and was trying to then scale it on my own and make sure everything was still being done that needed to be done. And that was part of the reason that a few years in, why partnering up with someone else to become sort of co-founder of that business made a lot of sense at the time, because our skill sets differed in terms of I was more interested in the sales and the marketing and the networking and going out there and growing the business, and I really have the vision and the purpose and could see the future. And my counterpart was far more into the technical nitty-gritty and although I have that and understanding, can do it, I could see a time when I would rather be focused my time and effort on the growing of the business, and having someone who could look after the technical side of the business and maybe a little bit more on the operational side would be of huge benefit. And that's how that came about.
Have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur? Have you always been a founder, run your own business? Because you had previous one, you've done some employment. Has it always been your ambition?
Yeah, it's always been there. So the earliest I can recall was when I was at school. I was in my secondary school, and we had houses. So our houses were named after trees. So I was in the house of Maple, the maple tree. So I was in Maple, and we had a project which was to raise money for a local charity, and there were several charities, and I came up with the idea for our group, which eventually got chosen. A number of people come up with the ideas. I came up with the idea of using the home economics rooms during the break and lunchtime to offer an alternative to the canteen, because they didn't sell jacket potatoes, and jacket potatoes used to be a really kind of used to be a thing back in the 90s where you could go out and get a jacket potato. And anyway, so I was like, we'll do our own jacket potato thing, and it was called Maple's Potato Shack. And I went out at the weekends and bought blocks of cheese and tubs of coleslaw and potatoes. And then early in morning break, we'd go in. There was a couple of us. We'd go in and we'd put all the potatoes in the ovens. And then lunchtime would come around, and then we'd get those out. And what happened was, this is a 2-week project. And by the end of the first week, we were having complaints from the school canteen because there were so many people coming and buying our jacket potatoes that they were throwing away so much food that it was causing a problem. So I was actually put in the second week, I was tapered in by the establishment, which was the school, because my business was going so well. And actually, I won an award for that at school, because it was a runaway success, and we raised, about 4 times as much as any of the other projects that were run. So that, and I think at an early age that gave me a taste for running businesses and wanting to do my own thing. Also, my parents were both self-employed. My dad had his own garage, which was a successful garage, like running mechanics and body shop, repairing cars. My mum was a hairdresser. She was, had her own shop. Then when she had me, she gave up the shop but was self-employed for many years. But I think the thing was that at that age, I knew it was there, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my future. I actually wanted to follow in my father's footsteps. I wanted to take over the garage, but it was a very difficult time for him and the industry. He was, a proper mechanic. Everything was becoming diagnostic electronics and that, and he really advised me not to go down that path. So I didn't follow that path and become a mechanic and go into the garage. And the next thing was like, well, technology and IT. I like tinkering with IT and technology. So that actually became what I focused on. I actually went back to night school to do my foundation work in IT. I didn't even do it at school. At school, I focused on English and art and design because they were I was only concentrated on the things that I was good at. Everything else kind of fell by the wayside. I did okay at school, pretty middle of the road, but those things I excelled at. So I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career, and so I did my IT training. Then got a job at it wasn't an apprenticeship, but it was a similar type of thing as an apprenticeship, a very entry level job in an IT help desk in the late 90s, and then sort of worked there. And I think the thing is, when you land a job, especially when you're young, and it's a good environment, and there's a lot of people that you get on well with. We ended up having a really good social circle. The job was quite interesting. You get paid every month. It's very easy to fall into the trap of, this is all good. So what do I want to do? So it was a good sort of 8 or 9 years probably of doing that before I rediscovered that I really want to go out and do something on my own. And I read a book that was very pivotal in my decision making, which was by the late Felix Dennis, and it's called How to Get Rich. And it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek autobiography, but it was very much about entrepreneurialism and how you like to go out there and there's a phrase that always sticks in my mind. There's nothing more addictive than crack cocaine than a regular salary. And I just thought, that's so relatable because I was having these ideas of wanting to break out and do something of my own. And I realized that a lot of what was holding me in my job and my employment was just that regular paycheck. And that actually, if I wanted to go out and do something myself, I've just got to take that brave pill and go out there and do it. And so that's what I did. What is it
in the entrepreneurialism space that sort of triggered that triggers your interest? Obviously you've got a background, you've your family, schooling, but is there part of it that really works for you in terms of why entrepreneurialism is the direction you've always wanted to go in and what you enjoy?
I think it's that freedom of being able to be accountable to your own choices in life, whether they're good or bad, and learning and actually being able to learn by those and grow in that space. And then as you get older, you realize that you can use that to benefit others as well. So what I'm realizing now in my 40s is that the hard-won experience, as well as the successes that I've had over my lifetime, I'm now confidently able to pass that on to others that are interested in being a business owner or being an entrepreneur who are maybe where I was, 20 years ago, like 15, 20 years ago.
Interesting.
I think that's really a drive, is that you can be a master of your own universe. You've got to be prepared to take the rough with the smooth, but also you can be inspirational to others, and I think that's something that's probably more of a value now than it used to be. But certainly that's a part of it.
And I know you've just exited your business, or last year you mentioned you've exited your business.
Yes, correct.
What was that experience like, and for you, in terms of, because we talk to a lot of founders who've exited their business, and it's an emotional journey, it's a financial journey, it's all sorts of different new experiences for an entrepreneur. What was your personal experience of the exit?
Yeah, well, my personal experience of the exit was it was probably more emotional than anything else, because it wasn't the plan, should we say, to exit at that point. It came about because I'd been working for a few years, for about 2 years, with my previous sort of like co-founder, co-owner, and like I said, the plan was a 5 to 10 year plan when we started, but within the first 2 years of working together, we'd really pushed the business on, and between us, and we needed to start hiring people. So we hired our first person into the business, who I felt became invaluable to the business as well. Yet we hit a few hurdles in terms of picking up new customers. We had a few deals that didn't go our way, and I think when we talk about the emotional side, what that exposed was a slight difference in tolerance to our appetite for risk and for growth, and for the journey that you have to travel. And I think what that brought about is the fact that, well, should we both be on this journey together? This was probably a shock to the system, but looking back, I'm quite glad that shock to the system came earlier rather than later, because it gave us an opportunity to reevaluate and check on our direction. So, yeah, the upshot of that was he decided to buy me out of my half of the business, and I had this other idea in my head about another IT platform which I'd had for a few years and I'd never had time to do anything with. So I also thought, well, is this another opportunity to break away and do something new, even though effectively, because this wasn't planned, it wasn't a big exit. It was enough to see me for a year or so, but it wasn't any more than that. So I was having to make the decision, and I had to ensure that I had the support from my wife in order to make this decision, as well as to whether we carry on with this business and try and find a way through, or I take a break from it now and I take what I can from it and exit it and look to do something else. And again, like I said, it's because I've been through that cycle a couple of times before in life. I felt like it was a much more measured risk rather than it was an all or nothing. And so that was it. So it was much more of an emotional exit than it was a financial exit. Most people associate an exit of a business with, like a retirement or a semi-retirement. And I think that I used to think about it like that. I always thought we would work on this business until an exit, until we either find an investor that wants to buy us out and will give us a nice big payday, or we'll turn it into something that will build enough residual income that we can live off it for forever. And I used to think about that. And when this has come along, this has taught me that there's different contexts to different type of exits. And our exit was much more about making the right choice for the business and for the individuals than it was about the big payday. But it's given me, but what it's given me is it's given me time, and time is the one resource we can never get back. And if you've got an idea and you're an entrepreneur, you need the time to be able to develop that idea to realize any future success. And so that's now the journey I'm on.
Yeah, it's good. I always use the word opportunity, and what you've done there really is create an opportunity for yourself to have another go, right? Yeah, and not in a positive way, which I think is really reflective of someone in your position and someone who likes to create new businesses. Romesh, what's your view?
Yeah, great, James. Thanks for taking us through that. And yeah, I'm kind of getting that you were a natural entrepreneur. You had that entrepreneurial flair when you were younger, and we've we've had some good stories from guests recently on kind of early entrepreneurship. We had a fantastic chat with David Bell, who, he was charging his friends, for entry to his parents' swimming pool during the summer. So it's really interesting that you've always had that element from an early start, and I see that you've made various kind of steps. And now, the first step being the business that you set up post Apple, the next step being the business where you were essentially a co-owner, and you've made various learnings on those journeys. And I feel it's almost like you're ready now, right? You're ready to really push that go button on something that you are truly passionate about, you're in control of, and I suppose build something in a way that really follows your values and your dreams. And I think that's really interesting. And I echo Mike's point as well, that it's fantastic that you've taken a setback, because obviously, with your last business, you had a longer term plan. It didn't quite work out, but actually you're using that experience as an opportunity going forward, and that's a testament to you, really. And I think that's a trait that you often see in people who are successful, where you keep going, right? And so that's my takeaway from it so far. But I'd like to, I suppose, go into a little bit further that assessment with your last business. I want to find out more about Gen Z and how you're going to scale that business, and I want to dive into that. But actually, just explore further that assessment process that you had, because I think working with co-founders, co-owners can work brilliantly, but it can also be quite challenging. And I think you have to have alignment, don't you, on core elements. And I guess you went and came through a process where you realized that wasn't quite there. And how did you feel when you realized that?
I think a sense of frustration was probably the best way to describe it, because I could see that over the long term, this probably wasn't going to work out. And that's a sense of frustration, because if you look back 2 years ago when we started having the conversation, I never would have thought that was the case. I would have thought, together we are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and we're going to achieve everything we want to achieve. And because we were both saying the same things, it wasn't until we got a few years down the road that you realised that not everything that's said is necessarily true. And I don't mean that it was. When I say that, I think people have the greatest intentions. I think we all have the greatest intentions. But I think sometimes we don't always speak in the way that reality presents itself. And so, I felt this sense of frustration, because I got to a point where I could see we would probably do okay, but we're probably not going to become what we had spoken about and anticipated. And I think, to be fair, and this was on my side, so I take it, I was the one that wanted to be the driving force. I was the one that wanted to turn it into something we could go out, we could seek investment, we could grow it into a company that we could sell, in 5 to 10 years to one of the bigger IT incumbents, while we ride this wave of Apple adoption within businesses and become, a key player in that space. And I played my part in that, and my ex business partner will have his own views on it, but my views are on it. We weren't quite aligned in terms of the drive and what I wanted to put into it and where we needed to get. and what work actually needed to be put into that, and what commitment there was to do it. Is the kind of probably the diplomatic way I can describe it. But then that frustration bore out a case of, well, look, it's either going to go down this path or this path. It can't go down any other. And so we came to an agreement. That's what you do. We came to an agreement, and the agreement was that he was going to take that business model forward, and I would do something different. And but like I say, at that stage, I already had what can I do with the time? If I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing? Like, that was already going on in the background. Yeah. So it gave me a sense of, well, here's an opportunity. Here's maybe another opportunity. But I also accepted the fact that I was kind of walking back out into the harsh cold of startup land, whereas I'd actually spent the last 7 or 8 years establishing a foundation of something that could have been much bigger. But like I say, that was my choice, and I don't regret that choice, and I'm still a way off finding out whether that was the right thing to do or not. But
yeah, well, I think a key insight for me there, and it sounds like it was a tough time as you both navigated that, really, and you had to assess whether it was what you both wanted and it was aligned. And actually, you've been really proactive, identified, that it wasn't kind of going quite where you wanted it to go. So well done for you for identifying it, having a grown-up conversation, and then taking action. A lot of people don't do that. So you've created, as we've talked about, this opportunity. Can I ask, what are your biggest learnings from that experience, or just the experience of that particular business, and how are you taking those learnings towards your new business?
So I suppose the learning that you might not necessarily think is a real takeaway, but I think is so important, is that you can't predict the future, right? No one really can predict the future. You can only make your best guess on the information that you have available. And some might say, well, you should never have partnered up and done what you did with the business, because in a reasonably short time, within the space of 3 years, definitely, things had completely gone back the other way. However, on the information that I had at the time, I felt like I was making the right decisions. But you can't predict the future. So you have to take that on board, I think, and not be too hard on yourself, and make sure that you can learn through something, but still keep a good perspective on what the decisions you make and whether they are the right thing to do right now. I think that when I was younger, I would be far quicker to make a choice without necessarily thinking something through, or listening to others. So therefore, you can make choices. But when you're younger, you can tolerate failure more and rebound from failure more quickly. But I think, in particular, what this has taught me is that you can't predict the future. What will be will be. You can only make the best choice you can make in the moment, and so you have to temper the go with your gut, as well as going with what seems like sensible. But I think what I've learned is I'm more careful, and I'm going to be more careful, and I'm more aware of who I'm going to be going into business with. And I say that because for the new venture, I have co-founders. All right. But
I was going to ask you that question.
Yeah. But I've realised it's almost impossible to do it on your own as well. I think that a lot of the limitation I had when I was probably younger was that I tried to do too much on my own, and I really struggled to give up control or delegate effectively to others, or even maybe train people to the degree that they were doing the job well enough that I didn't have to oversee it to the point I thought, well, why don't I do this myself? So I've also learnt that through this last business and having a co-founder, is that it's not always the right person, but I think having the right people around you is invaluable and will really help you to grow, to strive and to thrive probably more quickly if you don't have the right people around you. If you stay too insulated, that is probably going to be detrimental to your early growth and success. I've definitely got a different awareness around who I'm going to be working with based on my experience, and that's, I think, what I've learned more than anything.
And have you got a newfound energy now? You're building a new business now. I know you're really keen on where it's going. You've come out of that exercise with a new opportunity, I guess. You've come out of that event with a new energy to build a new company. You found new partners. You're off going for a new business. Has it changed the dynamic with which you think now? And has it given you that opportunity for springboarding?
Yeah, it has, absolutely. And I think the other thing that I've learned and has brought this new sort of energy is around I always had the mentality of start a small business, grow a small business organically, and then look for ways to seek investment to grow and scale it. So come up with a really good sort of like recurring revenue proposition in the middle, and other associated things around, kind of build that up, prove it, and then go out and get the investment to grow it. And what I see nowadays, especially with a lot of tech startups, is that you don't need as much of that proof and traction as you probably think in yourself. Like, I think all entrepreneurs to some degree have this imposter syndrome, that they think they've got to prove themselves to someone or someone else. And actually the level to which you need to do that in the real world probably isn't as much as you think in your own head. And so we've gone for a different strategy, which is that we're going to build the product, the platform, and the idea. We're going to develop the idea, and we're going to get some traction. But we're looking at doing even a pre-seed raise of investment so that we can really invest in the business heavily in those first years, share the risk with others, and really see if we can make those 3 years enough to establish the business for it to grow. Whereas before, I was 3, 4, 5 years in, and I was still trying to do everything so organically that I probably didn't get as much traction as I wanted. And that's part of the reason probably I thought, you know what, perhaps I should take a break and have a go at doing this differently with different people. And so that's the mentality I'm taking forward, is get the right people around you. And getting the right people also includes, if you're going to get investment, especially at an early stage, what I'm realizing is it's your ability as a founder to convince others that you're worth investing in is actually more important than, or not as important, but certainly more important to present clearly that you're someone to invest in at a very early stage. As much as the business can be a good idea, like we've just said, we can't predict the future. You might have the greatest idea in the world, but in 3 years' time, that idea may be not valuable in the world we're going through. AI is changing things so much at the moment, and there's so many other things going on in the world. I don't know if what my idea is going to stand up in 3 years. But if I can convince someone that this idea is worth investing in, I think that's going to give me the best chance to do it, because I don't necessarily think that the organic approach is the way to go if you truly think you've got an idea that is scalable.
James, I love that. I love that. I love that. You've taken a step back. You've used that time to think really hard about how you're going to change your approach for the new business. I really like that you've identified people to the best of your ability. Like you say, you can't predict the future, but you've identified people who have the same kind of vision, goals, are aligned with your values. And you said something really, really important, which I'm a big believer in, and that's if you're looking to raise investment for a business, you've got to have a credible team, as well as that compelling story, that amazing product, that amazing service. You've got to have and be able to inspire confidence from your investors that you're the right people to execute, take it forwards, and make a success out of it. And I really like what I'm hearing there. Yeah, so that's great that you've gone through these experiences throughout your career and continually layering them on and informing your next steps. So yeah, really good. Sorry, Mike, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, James is making me think of a question that I'd be interested to get both of your views on, really. It's this question of bootstrapping versus investment. I'd say at the moment, James, a lot of the people we're talking to are more going for a bootstrapping approach than an investment approach. They're having to go further down the sales funnel, get more customers on board, and they're finding actually the later they wait, the better their investment strategy is if they're going for funding. Whereas you're deliberately going for a funding approach, which changes your initial KPIs potentially of what you're trying to do as early adopter customers, things like that. Romesh, what's your view on that at the moment with the companies you're working with and the kind of positioning of bootstrapping versus investment and the investment market that we're in 2026?
No, it's a good question, Mike. I think what I'm seeing or what we're seeing is that it's hard. It's hard to raise investment at the moment. It's a difficult environment, isn't it? We've talked in our podcasts recently about the fact that businesses are struggling generally, the macroeconomic environment, the political environment, whatever's going on, globally, in the UK. So it's tough. I think investors don't like this uncertainty. I think they're taking longer to make decisions and they're being more cautious. So that's the general kind of headline that we're seeing. Now, as to the approach, I think there's merits in both approaches, and it really depends on what the business is, what the leadership's appetite for risk is, and it is a kind of horses for courses. So on the one hand, if you're bootstrapping, I really like that approach, because I do like the organic growth. I like, if you've got a business, prove it, make some profit. Why do you need money to prove it? Right. Show that, and actually you'll build a story and you will, I suppose, give away less equity when you do, if you want to raise money in the future. So there's that side of the coin. On the other side, James has got a clear vision of growth. He's obviously built up through his experience and appetite for risk. He's very credible. And I think, there's a lot of really interesting things that I know, because I know a bit more about James's business than we've discussed so far today, that I think would appeal to investors. So it is a scenario, I think, that needs to be navigated carefully. Does it suit your business in terms of investment? Does it suit your product or service? And are you comfortable with, I suppose, offering equity to investors at an earlier stage? So there's multiple considerations. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is we've just launched a product and I'm having exactly this debate, James. So you raised a really interesting point where do we keep bootstrapping and look for customers? And one of the team is proposing we go for investment. So we're in that kind of idea. And I think you articulated really well, James, which made me think about the question in more detail is you've got a vision and you want to go fast. And actually bootstrapping isn't great for a fast strategy. It's kind of more incremental. And I think if the strategy is to grow fast because you need to, for whatever reason, competition, market, AI technology, your value proposition, your lifestyle, whatever you need, there's various reasons, then I do think investment is still one that people should consider, but it's a very strategic decision to your point, James.
Yeah, and if I can just add, my filter on that would be you've got to think about not what you need, but what the business needs. What does the business need? It's a bit like you think about it like one of your children sometimes. What do I need to give my child in order to set them up for success in the future? And at the time that and the strategy that I put behind and the actions I take now are what are going to shape them in years to come. And so I'm thinking like that, and having had the experience of bootstrapping, I think it very much depends on where you want your business to go. Now, the business I was in, to some degree, the business I was in previously, looking at it now with a bit of a slightly different perspective, probably wasn't a great business to be getting investment in anyway. And if I was to start another similar business, bootstrapping and organic growth probably would be the right option, because if you're looking for a business that maybe needs a few hundred customers to be considered a success and give you the lifestyle you want and maybe the retirement that you want, then that's the right way to go, because you're not going to be giving up equity. And that's a different pace of business. Whereas, the new business, we need thousands of customers to make this work. It's a scalable style business. It's a platform business where user adoption and the use of the services that come through that platform are indicative to its success. And that means it needs rapid growth, because there will be other potential competitors out there, which means we need to move fast. And the only way you can move fast is with the right amount of resources. So that's why, for this business model, it's not really a choice. Now, I'll caveat that to say that we're going to be opening our funding window soon. However, we're still going to be launching a platform as a public platform soon as well, in a public beta. And the reason is because we don't anticipate that this business is going to be successful through organic growth. But even if we get tens or even hundreds of customers using the platform when we are still in that organic stage, and it's pretty much me and a couple of other people pushing it. I mean, AI is bringing a huge amount of opportunity. It wasn't there before in terms of getting distribution. So, we might surprise ourselves and actually be able to generate a lot more adoption to the site than we think possible. And those two things are going to be running in tandem as well. So what we hope is we will get to an inflection point where we'll be speaking to an investor who sees that we have actually got some real world traction, and that if we apply enough resource to this, we can now scale it very quickly. And it's all about getting to I think if you're going to go on an investment journey, you've got to look at the long term. I'm not thinking get pre-seed investment because you can get up to £250,000 of investor money through the SEIS scheme, which is quite attractive to smaller investors, and that's what we're looking at doing. So like £250,000 doesn't go very far, but you're going to be giving up maybe 20% equity of the company. Now, no one wants to give up 20% of their company for 250 grand in this day and age. Like, that doesn't make good maths. So I'm already thinking, well, that 250 grand is to get us to 2 million of revenue. So within 12 to 24 months, we can be looking at a seed raise of maybe, X million. And then we'll be looking to see how we make this an international investment opportunity, and maybe we launch in the US or whatever, who knows? And then it will go on to a Series AD until we eventually sell out the business or we IPO the business. That's I think if you've got a business model which is we need volume, then you've got to then that's where that comes into play. If it's we need a few hundred customers and we can tick that over, then that's different. I think that's where you'd make the distinction, Mike.
It's yeah, and I think you've made some really good points, both of you actually. Speed, if that's of the essence, then there's definitely a very strong case for investment. We've supported clients in raising multi-millions actually, and smaller amounts too. One of the things I would say, and I like that you said this, James, because I think it's really important. There is a temptation, there's a trap if you go for investment that's all you focus on. Mm-hmm. So I was really pleased to hear that you are developing the business concurrently and focusing on that. And it's equally important because, listen, investment is a distraction. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. If you want high quality investors, you want good money coming in. And we've talked about the slightly tougher regime. So, the tougher environment we're in. So I think it's really important to make sure that while you do look to raise investment, you keep driving the business forwards and keep hitting proof points and achieving milestones which show that your business is moving forward with purpose, and that ticks all the boxes. If you can get that balance right, then I think that's extremely powerful. But yeah, just to be careful that, because I've seen businesses where investment, fundraising starts to become their key activity to the detriment of the actual revenue raising and business itself.
I also have so I'm working on the new project as much as I can, but I'm also contracting as well for another organisation, helping them implement AI frameworks and automations into their business, going as far as building them a whole system from scratch, basically using AI and developing that into business. So I have that running alongside at the moment, so that brings in some income. And I think this is it. It's very much let's see where this journey takes us, and if the business without the investment may turn into something that brings in some side revenue and is a small business in its own right. This is why I think there's always other opportunities out there. You just don't know. And if that ends up being the path that we take, then that will mean I'll have other opportunities to invest time and effort and energy into in the future, which we don't know what the future holds. However, if we get the investment that we intend once the business is running concurrently as well, and we can apply that resource, then that will ultimately tell us whether we do have what could be the next. I don't know. The next, people use the word unicorn, but I try and use that very sparingly because it almost sounds a bit pretentious to suggest that I might, be running a next Uber or whatever. But I mean, the idea behind the platform is very much that. It's about taking tech support and making it available to everyone in a way that they can access it on their own terms, but get very good quality support from people that really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, interesting. How are you finding that juggling game, James, which is one of the areas I'm really interested in, where people are exploring, going on a journey of kind of creating something new versus at the moment, as you said, doing consulting, looking for investment, developing a strategy, building the product with your co-founders. How are you finding the ability to juggle your own motivation and time doing that while you're building up Gen Z?
And having a family at the same time,
I forgot about the non-work bits.
Yeah, let's not forget that as well. And my wife, who works full time as well. So, and it's tough, all right. So, and the reason I add that in is because there is no getting around it, and there's no point in sugarcoating the fact that if you're going to make the choice to start and run your own business, whether that is going to be a self-employed smaller business, a more local business, shall we say, versus trying to start something that has maybe got some more scope from that, it is hard, right? You have to learn to be able to live on next to nothing, and you have to be able to do that for as long as is necessary, and you have to be very, very understanding of the people that are closest around you and how that impacts them and how you navigate that to ensure that you have enough balance to be able to see it through. That's the real challenge that I think a lot of people don't speak about. I don't think there's any question. I don't think there's any kind of entrepreneur that's worth his salt that will come out here and tell you that it's not tough when you start out. But I think that if you've got other responsibilities around you, then that just amplifies the responsibility you've got and the risk you're taking. And so that means being very self-aware, looking after yourself as much as you can. I'm quite diligent around my health and well-being, and about making sure that the people around me are on this journey with me and don't end up isolated, and I end up isolating myself, because otherwise you'll burn out, or you'll have you'll break down relationships that you really don't want to break down. So it's a tough one. And when I say about burnout, I feel like I live in a perpetual state of on the threshold of burnout. But then I think that is quite normal, I would say, for early stage entrepreneurs who understand that the cost, that if you want to achieve something, then you have to burn the candle at both ends. I think but you have to do that while still maintaining some balance. It's a very tricky, it's a real tightrope to walk. But I think you can't have it both ways. I could lean into my consulting and earn a very good day rate, or go and do some very nice projects and probably have, very good sustainable income and lifestyle. But actually, I think I've got an opportunity to do something bigger and more important than that, which is going to hopefully be of value to hopefully thousands, if not millions of people one day. And I think that if you feel like you can achieve that, then I think it's worth the effort and the sacrifice. Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but I hope that answers.
No, it's
a really good answer.
Yeah, it really is. And the entrepreneurial tightrope, that's you talked about the sacrifice there, right? And it is really hard. You're taking massive risks. That's what entrepreneurs have to do to build successful businesses, and it's a choice, isn't it? It's a choice that you're taking, and it's difficult, but that's why hopefully the rewards will be fantastic, and not just financial. There's just many rewards from building something successful, and I really hope that and I've got a lot of confidence that you will be able to achieve that based on everything I know about you and everything that you've talked about today. We've covered lots of areas here, really interesting stuff. I just want to kind of talk about the fact that I know you from a networking club, James.
Yes.
We're both part of the Thoughtful Leaders Club, run by the wonderful Mindy Gibbons-Klein. Networking is something that you've told me that you believe is extremely valuable. Can you tell us why that's become a focus for you?
Because people are the most important resource you're going to have around you, as much as the time that you can never get back. So you have to choose how to use your time. Whatever money you have to choose where you allocate that capital. Then the people you work with are as equally as important. And if you have to put yourself in the right environments. So if you don't go out and do networking and meet other people in business, or wanting to achieve similar things in you, then you won't find yourself in the right environment to build the relationships you need in order to get to where you want to go. And that's why I think networking is so important. I used to think of it as just a way to go and pitch to a room of people and expedite the amount of leads you can get. And I've been there and done it. I've been a BNI member. I've been for many a year, and that was good for me. And I see it. That's the place for that type of networking. I've been a member of the FSB, which is more of for a long time, which is more of an organisation about supporting young businesses, but also has a networking element, brings together different types of people and some different networking. And more recently, since I've joined the Thoughtful Leaders Club that Mindy and Phil run, that's made me realise that there's another layer of networking where it's more about your purpose and your drive to see what change you can make in the world and how you can influence and look after like the people around you and be thoughtful in what you do and the people you're responsible for, and not just make it all about yourself. So I think it comes down to relationships, which is can be a bit of a cliche, but it's so important. The relationships you build through your life will ultimately decide your level of success, however you term success. So I think that's why networking is so important, and networking can come in many forms. Like I go to a local meetup they do for local businesses, and it happens once a month, and it's much more sociable. It's kind of an evening we go to one of the different like local pubs or microbreweries or restaurant or somewhere like that. But you also never know what you're going to get out of it either. So I think that's why it's so important.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. Mike, what about you and networking? You're on a journey with networking, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm more immature than both of you on this space. I'm being pushed more and more to do it, and I've always preferred the more one-to-one kind of engagements and sort of learning in that way. But I'm starting to appreciate the ability to get out there and work with different communities and different teams and sort of just learning new ecosystems. And I think that's part of my maturity as a founder that's taken me longer to fully understand the benefits of it. And to your point, James, I think I was naive at first. I did think it was a sales opportunity, and that's why people did it. Therefore, I didn't want to go. Whereas to your point now, reflecting and going, actually just go and learn something new, go and meet new people, find out what they're interested in, and see if there's some alignment between what you're interested in. And if you take that approach, you'll find these events much more rewarding.
Yeah,
I know, Romesh, for you, it's a big thing, right? You're driving me in that direction.
Yeah, just agree with what you both said. Really, I think none of us here in this discussion are kind of pushy in terms of sales. What we want to do is build relationships where there are meaningful connections, and go out there and seek to help people. Those are shared values here, and I think if something comes around, that's great, but don't expect it, and actually just connect dots and see how you can give to the community, give back in some ways, and you never know. There's always a huge benefit, I think, in trying to connect dots, trying to help people, trying to put yourself out there in that sense, and it is all rooted in building really genuine relationships that you have to go back and nurture. There's no point going to an event collecting business cards, having a LinkedIn connection and then never speaking to those individuals again. It's a bit of a waste of time. So I think you have to do it with a certain sense of purpose and a certain approach. Certainly that's what's worked for me, and I sense that's what you guys are more comfortable, and that's how I got comfortable with it. Really, I wasn't someone who particularly liked the idea of networking, certainly when I was an employee. But when you're in business, it's massively important, I think, but you've got to make it work for you and in a way that you're comfortable with. Does that resonate with you both?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as with anything, it's only over the course of time that you get to realize these things. So if you're new to networking, think more about it pushing you outside of your comfort zone, but getting you into the environment you need to be in order to start making those new relationships that are vital in order to get you to wherever you want to get to.
Yeah, good.
Excellent. James, thank you so much. I think that's a good point at which to wrap up the conversation. There's so much more we wanted to talk about, actually, because you're a very value-driven individual, James, and I think we both would like to explore that more, but really enjoyed the conversation, actually, and what we covered today. So thank you. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Now, I've written down a couple of things. I always have a takeaway, James, that I try and implement. And I think I'm going to have another think about investment, because you've just given me the push I needed probably at this time to think about investment in one of my businesses. But I'm going to take away the entrepreneurial tightrope. We on this podcast talk a lot about roller coaster, but I quite like the entrepreneurial tightrope. I think that's my new coined word for the next few months.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm going to reveal something that not many people realise. Mike and I always have a bit of a tussle as the episode title after we do our podcast. But yeah, that's that. But you've helped us out massively there. I hope you enjoyed the chat, James.
I did. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and the space to do this. It's been a really eye-opening and rewarding experience.
Oh, thanks, brilliant. Well, I think we totally echo that. Excellent. Okay, listen. So thank you everyone very much for listening or watching. We are super grateful to James for joining us and for all of your support. We hope you like what you're hearing. Do get in touch and give us feedback. We want to get better. And if you'd like to support us, tell a friend who's interested in business about our podcast. Hope you can join us next time. Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.